Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season 10, Episode '07. Today, we dive into Cal Newport's transformative book, Deep Work, to explore a radical idea.
Hmm.
What if doing less work could actually make you more productive and spark true breakthroughs?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Exactly. We're taking a deep dive into some truly fascinating source material today, centered on Newport's insights into deep work. That's the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task.
Right, that intense, unbroken concentration.
You sent us excerpts from his book, and we're ready to unpack them. Our mission really is to pull out the key strategies and maybe some surprising truths about how we spend our workdays.
And how you, the listener, can reclaim your time for what truly matters.
Okay, let's dive in. So the journey into deep work begins with a really bold declaration, what Newport calls Rule #4, drain the shallows.
Drain the shallows, I like that.
Me too. And it immediately throws us into this intriguing experiment from a software company, 37 Signals. You probably know them now as Basecamp.
Oh yeah, Basecamp.
Back in 2007, they decided to shorten their work week from 5 days down to 4. So what happened?
Well, the outcome was pretty surprising, actually. Their employees seemed to accomplish, roughly the same amount of work, even with one less day in the office.
The same amount. In 4 days?
Yeah, and this success led 37 Signals to make the 4-day week a permanent summer policy. As co-founder Jason Fried famously put it, people should enjoy the weather in the summer. It really challenged the traditional idea of productivity, right?
That sounds almost too good to be true. Was this 4-day week, universally embraced? Or did it face some pushback, skepticism?
Oh, it definitely sparked debate. There was journalist Tara Weiss from Forbes, I think. She argued that trying to pack 40 hours into 4 days would actually be inefficient, could even decrease morale.
Okay. But she missed the point.
She kind of missed the point, yeah. Fried quickly clarified he wasn't suggesting cramming 40 hours into 4 days. His point was about doing less work overall, specifically, he said. 4 normal-ish 8-hour days. Ah, okay. 4 normal-ish 8-hour days. So how can both things be true? How can you get as much done while actually working fewer hours? That's the puzzle.
That's where this concept of shallow work becomes absolutely crucial. Fried observed that very few people genuinely work 8 productive hours a day.
Right.
So much time just gets eaten up by meetings, constant interruptions, browsing the web, office politics.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
So the really radical idea from 37 Signals isn't just doing less, it's realizing that a lot of our busy work is, well, surprisingly dispensable.
Exactly.
And the real power comes from replacing that wasted time with focused, deep work that truly moves the needle.
Precisely. The reduction in working hours at 37 Signals disproportionately eliminated that shallow work, while the truly impactful deep work remained largely untouched.
Ah, okay.
The crucial task still got done, which proved that much of what felt urgent, those constant pings and requests, was unexpectedly quite dispensable.
It's a shift from prioritizing the urgent to focusing on what's genuinely valuable. That's a great way to put it. It's a profound shift.
And 37 Signals didn't stop there, did they? After just eliminating shallow work, they went even further. They asked, what if we replace that recovered time with more deep work?
Right, and that's where their truly radical experiment came in. They gave employees an entire month off June, I think it was, to work deeply on their own self-directed projects.
Whole month, right?
Yeah, completely free from shallow work like status meetings or routine emails, just focus. And at the end of the month, they held a pitch day.
And the source notes some pretty impressive results from that pitch day. 2 projects actually went into production.
That's right, a better customer support tool and a new data visualization system, things that likely wouldn't have emerged from the day-to-day grind.
And Fried asked, rhetorically I guess, how can we afford to put our business on hold for a month to mess around with new ideas? How can we afford not to?
That really hits home. It highlights a critical reality for knowledge workers. The shallow work that often dominates our time is far less vital than it seems.
Right.
Eliminating significant amounts of it might not even affect the bottom line. And crucially, replacing it with deep work can actually make a business more successful.
So it shows that just being busy, that relentless activity, isn't the real engine of progress. It's that focused, undistracted effort.
That's the core idea.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, and your personal work life? What's the takeaway?
Well, it means we need to treat shallow work with a healthy dose of suspicion. While it's inevitable, you can't never respond to important emails, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
The goal isn't to eliminate it entirely, but to really tame its footprint, keep it confined so it doesn't constantly impede your ability to perform those deeper, more valuable efforts.
That makes a lot of sense. But it does raise a question for me.
Right.
Is there a limit? Like, how much deep work can we actually sustain in a day? Can you just do 8 hours straight?
Good question. Performance psychologists have definitely studied this, and the answer is generally no, not 8 hours straight. For those new to really rigorous focus, maybe about an hour a day is a reasonable starting point. Just an hour.
To start, yeah. For experienced practitioners, it can expand to around 4 hours, but rarely more than that.
4 hours max, generally.
Yeah, beyond that, you start facing diminishing returns. Your focus just isn't as sharp. But even though you can't spend a full 8-hour day in deep work, this doesn't lessen the urgency of cutting shallow work.
Why is that?
Because typical workdays are far more fragmented than most people suspect. Think about it. Meetings, calls, quick questions, email checks. It all adds up. The source gives an example of a professor whose scheduled meetings and classes might easily eat up half their day before they even get to their own work.
Right, leaving very little time for actual deep thinking or research.
Exactly. So draining the shallows is still critical, even if you can only manage a few hours of true deep work.
Okay, that clarifies things. Let's turn to some concrete strategies then for actually doing this. The source immediately dives into our, well, often flawed self-perception of time.
It mentions this fascinating study about British TV watchers who massively underestimated how much TV they watched, and similar gaps for sleep and work hours, too.
Yeah.
What's the big takeaway from that? Why do we get it so wrong?
Well, the key insight here is that we spend so much of our day just on autopilot, don't we?
Yeah. Reacting.
Reacting, exactly. It's incredibly difficult to prevent trivial tasks, that shallow stuff, from creaking in if you don't consciously confront your actual time usage and pause to ask, okay, what genuinely makes the most sense for me to be doing right now?
And the suggested strategy for this is, well, it sounds quite extreme at first glance. Schedule every minute of your day. I can already feel my own calendar app sweating just thinking about that. How do you even begin something that rigorous? Is it even practical?
Look, the idea isn't necessarily to create this rigid, unyielding master plan you follow perfectly. It's more about cultivating thoughtful awareness. The suggestion is, start each workday on a fresh page in a notebook. Mark out the hours down the left side. Then divide your day into blocks, maybe 30-minute blocks minimum, and assign specific activities to each one.
Even lunch, breaks.
Even lunch, even breaks, yeah. You can batch smaller, similar tasks, like answering a few quick emails into generic blocks and maybe list the specific items on the side. The power here is giving every single minute a job. Purposeful allocation.
Okay, but what happens when the schedule inevitably gets disrupted? Which, let's be honest, it always does.
Right where?
Your estimates are wrong, interruptions pop up, urgent new things appear. How do you maintain control then? Does the whole system just collapse?
No, and that's crucial. It's perfectly okay if your schedule gets disrupted. The key step, the habit to build, is to immediately take just a few minutes to create a revised schedule for the rest of the time you have left.
Okay. So you don't just scrap it.
You don't scrap it. You might rewrite it multiple times a day. The goal isn't unyielding fidelity to the initial plan you made at 8 a.m. It's about maintaining thoughtful control over your time going forward from that moment of disruption. It's constant course correction.
Right, staying intentional. So beyond just revising on the fly, are there tactics to make this dynamic scheduling process more stable, more effective?
Yeah, the source gives a few tips. First, try to accurately, maybe even conservatively, predict task times. Most people initially underestimate how long things actually take.
Guilty.
We all are. Second, use what Newport calls overflow conditional blocks. So you block the expected time for a task, then add an additional block right after it. This extra block is designated for either more work on that task if it runs long, or if you finish early, you use it for an alternate, non-urgent task you've already identified. So no time is wasted deciding what to do next.
Clever. Like a backup plan built in.
Exactly. And third, just be liberal with your task blocks. Make them slightly longer than you think you need, and scatter plenty of them throughout the day to absorb those inevitable surprises and interruptions without derailing everything.
Okay, I can see how that adds flexibility. But I can still hear some listeners thinking, this sounds way too restrictive. What about spontaneity? What about just getting lost in a creative flow state? Doesn't this kill that?
Yeah, that's a common reaction, and the source addresses it directly. The author himself maintains a rule. If an important insight or a genuine creative burst strikes, that is a perfectly valid reason to ignore the schedule unless you have a truly unskippable commitment, of course, and pursue that insight.
Ah, okay. So it's not absolute.
It's not absolute. This isn't about rigid constraint for its own sake. It's about thoughtful awareness and making deliberate choices about your time. Structure, ironically, can actually instigate innovation by ensuring you carve out dedicated time for deep work, while also empowering you to abandon the plan when real inspiration strikes. The danger, Newport argues, is that without structure, our time easily devolves into just shallow, unproductive busy work.
That makes sense. The structure creates the space, but doesn't imprison you within it.
Precisely.
Okay, that's a great lead in to our next strategy, which is about quantifying the depth of every activity. Because how do we really know what counts as shallow work versus deep work, especially for tasks that feel a bit ambiguous?
Right. We need a clearer definition. The source provides a formal one. Shallow work is defined as non-cognitively demanding logistical-style tasks often performed while distracted.
Yeah, non-demanding, logistical, distracted.
Yeah, and crucially, these efforts tend not to create much new value in the world and are easy to replicate. Things like checking email constantly, scheduling calls, simple expense reports, those are pretty clearly shallow.
Sure, those are easy. But what about those tasks that feel more demanding or important? Like, say, editing a complex academic article, or building a detailed PowerPoint summarizing quarterly sales values, or even attending what feels like a crucial project planning meeting. How do you assess the true depth of those?
That's where the ambiguity lies. The source offers a really simple yet eliminating question to cut through it. How long would it take, in months, to train a smart, recent college graduate with no specialized training in my field to complete this task?
Ah, the smart college grad test.
Yeah.
Okay, let's apply it for editing that complex academic paper.
Well, that requires profound subject matter expertise, understanding nuance, critical thinking. It could easily take 50, 75 months of specialized training or PhD level work for someone to do that effectively. So definitely deep.
Deep. Okay. Now, what about building that detailed sales PowerPoint?
Okay, factor in learning PowerPoint itself. Understanding the required organizational format, knowing the key metrics and what they mean. A bright, motivated grad could probably pick that up reasonably well in, maybe 2 months of focused training and exposure?
2 months. So,
Yeah.
shallow, even if it feels important.
Relatively shallow, yes. It doesn't leverage deep, hard-won expertise in the same way. Now, what about attending that complex planning meeting?
That one feels tricky. It seems important to be there.
It might seem important, but think about the grad test. Could a smart grad learn the project milestones, the key player skills, the organizational dynamics, enough to meaningfully contribute, not just sit there in, say, 3 months?
Probably. Yeah, I guess they could.
If so, then it's likely a shallow task, Newport argues. These meetings often involve a lot of logistical discussions, status updates, maybe some posturing, but not necessarily deep, focused, collaborative content generation that requires unique expertise.
Okay, I'm starting to see the pattern. So what does this test tell us about how we should prioritize our time?
It's pretty clear. If a task genuinely requires many months or even years of training for a smart newcomer, it leverages your hard-won, valuable expertise and is likely deep work. That's where you should focus.
And if they could pick it up quickly?
Then it's likely shallow. The strategy is to consciously bias your time towards the deep, that academic paper editing, high priority. The PowerPoint in the meeting, while may be necessary to some degree, should be minimized or streamlined because they offer a low return on your specific high-value time investment.
Minimize the time spent on things a trained grad could do relatively quickly.
That's the essence of it. Protect your most valuable cognitive resources.
Okay, moving on from personal time management and task definition, the book then suggests tackling shallow work on a more organizational level. It involves having a frank conversation with your boss.
Or with yourself, you're self-employed, yeah.
Right. The question is, what percentage of my time should be spent on shallow work? Is there a target?
For most non-entry-level knowledge work jobs, the source suggests aiming for somewhere between 30 and 50% shallow work.
30 to 50%. Why that range?
Well, below 30%, you risk becoming what the author calls a knowledge work hermit, maybe too disconnected from necessary logistical coordination or collaboration.
Right. You can't completely ignore email or meetings.
Exactly. But above 50%, there's a real psychological cost, Newport argues. A distaste for spending the majority of your skilled time on unskilled, easily replicable tasks. It feels wrong for highly trained professionals.
That makes sense.
Ah.
So how does having this specific shallow work budget, say 40%, actually impact our daily decision-making and workflow?
It basically forces you to be much more selective. You have a quota. It means you have to start saying no to new shallow projects or requests that push you over budget.
Right.
And it encourages you to aggressively reduce the shallow components in your existing work. Maybe you push for results-driven email reports instead of weekly hour-long status meetings. Maybe you dedicate your mornings to focused work in communication isolation. Maybe you stop feeling obligated to instantly reply to every email you're merely CC'd on.
So it empowers you to make those changes.
Absolutely. These changes are incredibly positive for making deep work truly central to your professional life, not just something you squeeze in around the edges.
I can see how that would empower an individual.
Yeah.
But why is it so important to get explicit agreement, or at least have the conversation with your boss about this budget? Why not just do it quietly?
Well, zooming out a bit, having that agreement with your boss provides crucial implicit support. It gives you cover.
Cover.
Yeah, cover for turning down obligations or restructuring projects to minimize shallowness. You can frame it not as being difficult, but as being necessary to hit your agreed-upon target mix of deep versus shallow work, which is ultimately better for the company, too.
Ah, so you align it with performance goals.
Exactly.
Okay.
When bosses see the numbers, when they grasp the economic reality of paying, say, a senior engineer or lawyer to spend 60% of their time on administrative tasks a junior person could handle, they'll often agree that you need to say no to some things. It makes financial sense.
Okay. What if you're an entrepreneur or self-employed? How does this apply then? You're your own boss.
This exercise is perhaps even more critical if you're working for yourself. It forces you to confront, maybe uncomfortably, how little time you might actually be spending producing the core value that drives your business.
Ouch.
It gives you the confidence, the justification to scale back on those endless networking coffees or administrative tasks that feel productive but aren't really moving the needle. Instead of feeling guilty for saying no to every shiny object or opportunity, you focus on getting the most out of a constrained amount of shallow work time, rigorously preserving space for the deep work, the product development, the strategic thinking, the core creation that truly drives your business forward.
So it brings clarity and focus even without an external boss. But what if you have that conversation with your boss and their answer implies that your job is, in fact, all shallow work or mostly shallow? That's got to be a tough reality for some people.
It is tough, but here's a surprising benefit. Even a stark answer like, look, your job requires as much shallow work as needed, is incredibly useful feedback. It tells you, clearly and directly, that this isn't a job that currently supports or values deep work. Therefore, it's not a role that's likely to help you truly succeed and differentiate yourself in the modern information economy, where deep work is becoming increasingly valuable.
So it's a signal.
It's a strong signal. In that case, the source suggests it might be time to start planning a strategic transition to a position, or maybe even a company, that does value depth. It gives you clarity, even if it's not the clarity you hoped for.
Right. Better to know than to struggle against the tide indefinitely. Okay, let's move to the next strategy. Finish your work by 5:30, or fixed schedule productivity. This one immediately caught my eye.
Yeah, it's appealing, isn't it?
It really is. It's about setting a firm cutoff time for work each day, say 5:30 p.m., and then working backward from that deadline to make everything fit. The author himself shares a pretty compelling personal story about this.
He does. He states pretty clearly that he rarely sends emails or does any work after 5:30 p.m., which is unusual in academia.
Very unusual. Conventional wisdom, especially in academia, suggests grueling, endless schedules are basically required for success.
Right. Yet Newport mentions that between 2011 and 2014, while sticking to this fixed schedule, he published around 20 peer-reviewed articles, won grants, published books. Basically, he was highly productive by any standard in his field, all while avoiding that intense chronic overload we often see.
It really makes you wonder, how is that possible? What's the secret?
Exactly. And it's not just him. The source also brings up Radhika Nagpal, who was then a Harvard computer science professor. She adopted a similar fixed schedule approach, limiting her work week strictly to 50 hours.
Also very countercultural for Harvard academia, I imagine.
Extremely. And yet, Nagpal achieved tenure and became a full professor remarkably quickly. Her main technique, setting what she called drastic quotas on shallow endeavors.
Drastic quotas? Like what?
The example given is travel. She limited her professional travel to just 5 trips a year when her peers were typically traveling 12, maybe even 24 times a year for conferences, talks, etc.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is. This ruthlessly called a major source of shallow work and disruption, directly protecting her time and energy for her deep efforts, her original research, which is what ultimately mattered for tenure and promotion.
So the secret behind both their successes, despite the intense demands of their field, seems to be this strategic, almost ruthless culling of shallow work enabled by the fixed schedule.
That seems to be the core of it. The broader lesson from both their successes is pretty clear. These fixed time limits aren't just about personal efficiency. They force a ruthless prioritization of deep work. They force you to cut the fluff.
Because you simply don't have time for it.
Exactly. You ruthlessly reduce shallow work while preserving deep work. This frees up not just time, but also mental energy for high-value production. The source even suggests that reducing shallow work actually frees up more energy for the deep alternative, allowing for greater output.
Interesting. So less drain means more fuel for what matters.
Kind of, yeah. And additionally, these time limits necessitate more careful thinking about your systems, your organizational habits, your workflows, which also leads to more value being produced from shorter, more organized schedules.
This sounds like it could lead to profound benefits for most knowledge workers, not just academics fighting for tenure.
Absolutely. I think fixed schedule productivity creates this powerful scarcity mindset regarding your time. Suddenly, any obligation, any meeting, any request that falls outside of your core deep efforts becomes highly suspect.
Your default answer has to shift towards now.
Precisely. Your default becomes no unless there's a compelling reason for yes. The bar for accessing your time and attention rises significantly. It can even challenge fundamental, often unstated assumptions about your company's culture. Like, is responding to emails at 8 p.m. really expected, or is it just a habit we've all fallen into?
Questioning the norms.
Yeah. Newport calls it a meta habit because it has such broad, transformative impact across your entire professional life. It changes how you approach everything.
A meta habit. I like that. Okay, finally, let's tackle what the source calls the quintessential shallow activity. Email.
Email. The bane of modern existence for many.
Right. It has this insidious grip on our attention, making us feel like we have almost no say over its role in our lives. It just dictates our day. How can we possibly push back against this perceived tyranny?
Well, the first thing to realize is that resisting isn't futile. You actually have far more control than you probably think you do. The source provides 3 pretty practical tips to help you, the listener, regain authority over your electronic communication.
Okay, I'm ready. Tip number 1.
Tip #1 is make people who send you email do more work. Essentially, set up sender filters.
Make them do more work.
Okay.
Hey, explain. This sounds like shifting the burden.
It is, intentionally. It's about changing the default expectation that anyone who sends you a message is automatically owed a response, regardless of the quality or relevance of their message. The author himself uses a special-purpose email address for unsolicited requests, and his auto-reply or web page clearly states conditions like, he'll only respond to proposals that closely match his current schedule and research interests.
So he's upfront about the filter.
Exactly. This is called a sender filter. It significantly reduces inbox time simply by asking correspondents to filter themselves before hitting send, or at least to craft a much more compelling pitch.
Does it work?
The author claims he eliminated tons of long, complicated, unsolicited advice requests this way, but more importantly, it resets expectations. It transforms the inbox from being this constant source of obligation and guilt into more of a collection of opportunities you can glance at when you actually have free time, without feeling bad for not responding to everything instantly.
Okay, but doesn't this approach seem a bit, I don't know, pretentious, or maybe just socially awkward? Do people get offended?
That's the fear, right? But
Yeah.
the author's experience and others mention, like consultant Clay Herbert or style expert Antonio Centino, who use similar filters, FAQs, surveys, even small fees or pre-message agreements. Their experience suggests, no, not really.
Really?
Most people actually accept your right to control your own incoming communication, and many even appreciate the clarity. They know where they stand. And ironically, it can even earn you more credit when you do respond because it becomes a pleasant surprise rather than an expectation. It's about setting clear boundaries.
Okay, boundary setting. Makes sense. Now, tip number 2 addresses that common habit of just dashing off quick email responses. I have to admit, I'm totally guilty of that quick reply reflex. It feels productive in the moment.
It does feel productive, doesn't it? That little dopamine hit of clearing an email.
Yeah. But you're saying it actually creates more work down the line.
Often, yes. While that quick, maybe incomplete response provides temporary relief, it very often leads to a frustrating cycle of back and forth messages, clarifications, follow-ups, each one sapping just a little bit more of your time and attention over the long run.
The endless email chain.
The endless chain. So the suggested strategy here is to pause before hitting reply and ask yourself, what is the actual underlying project represented by this message, however small, and what is the single most efficient process measured in the number of messages generated for bringing this project to a successful conclusion?
Okay, thinking about the process, not just the immediate reply. Can you give us an example of how that process-centric approach works in practice?
Sure. For a simple, do you want to grab coffee sometime? Email. Instead of replying sure when it works, which guarantees at least one more round, a process-centric response would be something like, sounds good. I'm free Tuesday at 2 p.m. or Thursday at 10 a.m. at the cafe downstairs. If either works, just confirm. If not, feel free to call me at number to find another time.
You propose specifics and put the ball back in their court to close the loop.
Exactly. You've potentially ended the email thread right there. Or, for something more complex, like reviewing a colleague's research proposal, instead of a quick, looks interesting, let's discuss, you might reply, thanks. Please email me your detailed notes by Friday. I'll block time to review them next week, create a shared document with my feedback by Wednesday, and then we can schedule a 30-minute call for sometime the week after to finalize.
Wow, okay. That lays out the entire path. Much more upfront effort, though.
It is slightly more upfront thought, yes. But the key benefit is saving time and mental energy overall.
How so?
It significantly reduces the total number of emails bouncing back and forth in a thread. That means less time physically in your inbox and less mental energy expended on tracking that particular open loop. It immediately closes the loop on the project in your mind, freeing up precious mental real estate that would otherwise be occupied by remembering, oh yeah, I need to get back to Sarah about coffee. That extra few minutes of thought up front can save many more minutes and cognitive load later on.
Close the loop. I like that. Okay, this brings us to the third and final email tip, which you flagged as the most radical.
Definitely the most countercultural.
It's based on observing famous, highly accomplished academics, I think at MIT, whose default behavior was often...
Well, not to respond to emails at all.
Correct, just ignore them sometimes.
What's the thinking behind that? Just letting emails disappear into the void?
Their underlying philosophy, as Newport interprets it, is profoundly simple, if maybe a bit brutal. It's the sender's responsibility to convince the receiver that a reply is actually worthwhile.
The burden is entirely on the sender. Entirely. If the case isn't convincing, if the question is unclear, if the effort required for the receiver to respond isn't absolutely minimized by the sender, then no response is given. Silence is the default.
Wow. That sounds incredibly liberating on one hand, but also a bit intimidating, maybe even rude. How does the book suggest we navigate the potential social awkwardness or friction that might create? People might get upset.
It acknowledges that it can certainly be uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being highly responsive. It goes against social conventions. But the source quotes Tim Ferriss here. Develop the habit of letting small bad things happen. If you don't, you'll never find time for the life-changing big things.
Letting small bad things happen. Like someone being mildly annoyed you didn't reply to their non-critical email.
Exactly. The argument is that people actually adjust their expectations to your communication habits relatively quickly. If they know you only respond to clear, concise, relevant emails, they'll start sending you clear, concise, relevant emails, or they won't email you.
So the quality of incoming mail might actually improve.
Potentially, yes. And the rewards are significant. You end up sending far fewer emails yourself, and you simply ignore many of those that aren't easy or compelling to process. This drastically weakens the grip your inbox has on your time and your attention. The source gives some filtering rules, too.
Oh, like what?
The professorial email sorting rules are basically, do not reply if the message is ambiguous or would be hard for you to generate a response to. Don't reply if it's not a question or proposal that genuinely interests you or fits your goals. And don't reply if nothing really good would happen if you did respond, and nothing really bad would happen if you didn't.
That last one is key. The good thing, bad thing test.
Yeah. Obviously, there are exceptions. An email from your CEO probably needs a reply. But applying these filters ruthlessly to the bulk of your inbox can be transformative.
Transformative, but definitely takes some courage to implement.
It does. It's a significant shift in mindset about who controls your attention.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, our listener? We've taken a pretty deep dive today into how Cal Newport's deep work urges us to fundamentally reconsider our relationship with our work, especially all that shallow stuff.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
From the surprising results of that 37 signals, 4-day work week, to the power of meticulously scheduling your time, quantifying the true depth of your tasks, using that college grad test, maybe even budgeting shallow work with your boss.
Or rigorously protecting your focused hours through fixed schedule productivity, like finishing by 5:30 and taking back control of your email using those 3 strategies.
It really all boils down to reclaiming your time and attention for the efforts that genuinely matter, doesn't it?
I think that's the overarching message, yes.
Yeah.
Much of the busyness that fills our professional lives is actually self-imposed or culturally imposed and surprisingly unproductive when you really analyze it. By consciously, maybe even ruthlessly, pruning away the shallow, you don't just become more efficient in a narrow sense. You actually open up the critical space, the time, and the mental energy needed for real creativity, for innovation, for breakthroughs, and ultimately for a deeper sense of accomplishment and meaning in your work.
It's about working smarter, not just harder or longer.
Exactly. Focusing your finite energy on what truly counts.
So this raises an important question, a challenge maybe, for you to consider this week. What's just one piece of shallow work that you could ruthlessly minimize or maybe even eliminate entirely from your schedule starting tomorrow?
And perhaps more importantly, what truly deep, valuable task could you reclaim that time for?
We really hope this deep dive helps you think about how to transform your own work habits, making more space for the work that truly impacts your life and your goals.